The fading sun cast long shadows across the dusty plains of Texas as Rose Blackwood clutched her infant daughter to her chest, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. The church doors had slammed behind her with such finality that the sound still echoed in her ears, drowning out the whispering townsfolk who watched her shame from a distance. It was 1875, and in the small town of Willow Creek, an unwed mother was little better than a common criminal. "Hush now, Emma," Rose whispered, adjusting the small bundle on her hip as she walked with no destination in mind. Her family home was barred to her. The church had cast her out, and the child's father had disappeared upon learning of her condition. With only the clothes on her back and the few supplies stuffed hastily into a worn leather satchel, Rose felt the weight of her uncertain future bearing down upon her with each step. The spring air carried a chill as the day surrendered to evening, and Rose's thin shawl provided little protection against the growing cold. Her feet ached from walking, and Emma's cries grew increasingly distressed as hunger set in. Spotting a lone tree in the distance, Rose decided it would provide shelter for the night, though she knew the meager provisions she carried would not last more than a day. "We'll be all right, my sweet girl," Rose murmured, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. "Mama will find a way." As she approached the gnarled oak, a movement in the distance caught her eye. A rider was approaching, the silhouette of cowboy hat and horse unmistakable against the darkening sky. Rose clutched Emma tighter, her heart racing with fear. Lone travelers often meant danger for a woman in her position, and she had nothing to defend herself with save for the small knife tucked in her boot. The horse slowed as it neared, and Rose could make out the rider's features: a young man, perhaps 25, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes that reflected the dying light. His clothes were dusty but of good quality, and the horse beneath him was a fine chestnut mare that spoke of care and attention. "Evening, madam," he called, keeping a respectful distance. "Yates McKinnon at your service. You look like you could use some assistance." Rose hesitated, her protective instincts warring with her desperate situation. "I'm just resting a moment," she replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "My daughter and I will be moving on shortly." Yates dismounted, keeping his movements slow and deliberate as if approaching a skittish colt. "Nightfall's coming fast, and these parts ain't safe for a woman and child alone." His gaze fell to Emma, who had quieted at the sound of the man's deep voice. "I've got a ranch about 3 miles west. There's a warm meal and shelter if you're willing. Why would you help strangers?" Rose asked, suspicion edging her words. Yates removed his hat, revealing a shock of dark hair streaked with gold from long days under the sun. "My ma raised me to believe that helping those in need wasn't kindness, it was duty." He gestured to the vast emptiness surrounding them. "And out here, turning away from someone who needs help is the same as condemning them." Something in his earnest expression made Rose want to trust him, despite the warnings that echoed in her mind. Emma let out a small whimper, reminding Rose that her pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "I'd be grateful for a meal," she conceded, "and somewhere safe for my daughter to sleep." Relief washed over Yates's features. "Then it's settled." He stepped forward, offering his hand. "May I help you up?" Rose hesitated only a moment before accepting his calloused palm. With surprising gentleness, he helped her mount the horse, ensuring Emma was secure in her mother's arms before swinging up behind them. "I didn't catch your name," he said as he nudged the horse into a gentle walk. "Rose," she replied after a moment. "Rose Blackwood, and this is Emma." "Well, Miss Rose and Miss Emma, welcome to McKinnon hospitality," Yates said, his voice warm against the cooling air. As they rode toward the setting sun, Rose felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. She had no reason to trust this stranger. Yet something told her that Yates McKinnon might be the answer to the prayer she'd been too afraid to speak aloud. The McKinnon ranch emerged from the twilight, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a main house, barn, and several outbuildings. Lamplight spilled from the windows, creating a beacon of warmth in the gathering darkness. As they approached, a dog began to bark, alerting the household to their arrival. "That's just Biscuit," Yates explained as he helped Rose dismount. "He sounds fierce, but he's gentle as a lamb once he knows you're welcome." The front door opened, revealing an older woman with silver-streaked hair and Yates's kind eyes. "Yates McKinnon, you were supposed to be back before dark," she called, her tone more concerned than scolding. Her gaze fell on Rose and Emma, and her expression softened immediately. "You've brought guests." "Ma, this is Rose Blackwood and her daughter Emma," Yates explained, leading them toward the house. "They were in need of shelter for the night, Mrs. McKinnon's eyes took in Rose's disheveled appearance and the infant on her hip with a knowing glance that held no judgment. "Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Martha McKinnon, and any friend of my son's is welcome here." She stepped aside, gesturing them in. Come in, come in. Supper's still warm, and you look like you could use a good meal." The interior of the McKinnon home was simple but comfortable, with handcrafted furniture and colorful quilts that spoke of Martha's skilled hands. The warmth from the stone fireplace and the scent of fresh bread wrapped around Rose like an embrace, bringing unexpected tears to her eyes. Now," Martha said gently, noticing Rose's emotion. "No need for tears. You're safe here." She reached for Emma with practiced hands. "May I?" "It looks like you could use a moment to catch your breath." Hesitantly, Rose relinquished her daughter, watching as Martha cradled Emma with the ease of a woman who had held many babies in her time. "She's beautiful," Martha commented, smiling down at the infant. "How old is she?" 3 months, Rose replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She's everything I have." Martha's eyes met Rose's, a world of understanding passing between them. "Well, right now, what you both need is food and rest. Yates, show our guest to the washroom while I prepare a plate." Yates nodded, guiding Rose to a small side room where a basin of clean water and soft towels awaited. "Take your time," he said. "No one will disturb you." Left alone, Rose allowed herself a moment of weakness, silent tears streaming down her face as she washed away the dirt of her journey. The kindness of strangers was something she had stopped believing in the moment her own family had turned their backs on her and Emma. When she emerged, feeling somewhat refreshed, Martha had set a generous plate of food on the table and was feeding Emma with a small dropper of warm milk and honey. "She's a good eater," Martha observed as Rose sat down, strong like her mama. Rose managed a small smile. "Thank you for this," she said, gesturing to the food and then to Emma. "For all of it. Eat," Martha encouraged. "Then we'll get you two settled for the night. We have a spare room that's yours for as long as you need it." As Rose ate, Yates and Martha exchanged glances but asked no probing questions about her circumstances. Instead, they spoke of the ranch, the upcoming spring roundup, and Martha's plans for her garden. Their normalcy was a balm to Rose's wounded spirit, allowing her to simply exist without the weight of judgment. Later, as Rose settled into the small but comfortable bedroom with Emma tucked into a makeshift cradle fashioned from a drawer lined with soft blankets, Martha appeared at the door with a nightgown and fresh linens. "These should fit you well enough," she said, placing them on the bed. "And don't you worry about a thing tonight. Just rest." Rose clutched the nightgown, overwhelmed by the generosity. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked, the question that had been burning in her mind finally spilling out. Martha sat on the edge of the bed, her expression serious. Because 26 years ago, I was you young, alone, with a baby and nowhere to go. She glanced toward the door Yates had disappeared through earlier. Someone showed me kindness when I needed it most, and it saved our lives. I'm just passing it forward. With that, Martha left Rose to ponder her words, the revelation adding new layers to her understanding of the McKinnons. As she drifted off to sleep, the sound of Emma's steady breathing beside her, Rose allowed herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, her fortune had finally changed. Morning arrived with the gentle cooing of Emma and the distant sounds of ranch life already in full swing. Rose dressed quickly in her worn dress, grateful for the opportunity to have washed it the night before. Emma, refreshed from a full night's sleep in comfort, gazed up at her mother with bright, curious eyes. "Good morning, sweet one," Rose whispered, lifting Emma into her arms. "Shall we see what the day brings?" In the kitchen, Martha was already busy preparing breakfast, the scent of coffee and frying bacon filling the air. She turned as Rose entered, a warm smile lighting her features. "There you are. I was wondering when you two would join us. Sleep well." "Better than I have in months," Rose admitted, settling Emma on her hip. "Is there anything I can help with?" Martha waved her toward a chair. "Sit, sit. You can help after you've eaten. Yates is already out with the cattle, but he'll be back for breakfast soon." As if summoned by his name, the door swung open, and Yates entered, bringing with him the fresh scent of morning air and leather. His presence filled the small kitchen, and Rose found herself straightening unconsciously, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "Good morning," he greeted, his smile genuine as his gaze fell on Rose and Emma. "Hope you both slept well." "We did, thank you," Rose replied, surprised by the warmth that spread through her at his attention. Breakfast was a lively affair, with Yates sharing stories of the ranch and Martha interjecting with her own observations. Rose found herself laughing for the first time in what felt like forever, the weight on her shoulders temporarily lifted by the simple joy of companionship. As they finished eating, Yates cleared his throat, addressing Rose directly. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Blackwood." Rose tensed, her guard immediately rising. Propositions from men rarely ended well for women in her position. Sensing her discomfort, Yates continued quickly. "Martha could use help around the house, especially with the spring roundup coming. And we have the room. If you're willing, we'd like to offer you a position here, room, board, and fair wages in exchange for your help." Rose stared at him, stunned by the unexpected offer. "You barely know me," she managed. "We know enough," Martha interjected gently. "You're a mother trying to protect her child. That tells me all I need to know about your character." "Besides," Yates added with a smile, "Biscuit took to you right away, and that dog's a better judge of character than most people I know." Rose glanced down at Emma, considering their options. They had nowhere else to go, no prospects, and winter would return eventually. The McKinnons were offering not just shelter but dignity, a chance to work for their keep rather than accept charity. "I accept," she said finally, meeting Yates's gaze. "Thank you for the opportunity." The relief in his expression was palpable. "Good, that's good." For the next week, Rose settled into a routine at the McKinnon ranch. She helped Martha with the cooking and cleaning, learned to tend the small vegetable garden, and cared for Emma. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time since learning of her pregnancy, Rose felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Yates was often busy with ranch duties, but he made time each evening to sit with Rose on the porch after Emma was asleep, sharing stories of his day and asking about hers. These quiet moments became something Rose looked forward to, though she tried not to examine too closely the flutter in her chest when he smiled at her. One evening, as they sat watching the stars emerge, Yates broached the subject they had both been carefully avoiding. "You don't have to tell me," he began, his voice low so as not to disturb the peaceful night, "but I'd like to know what brought you to that tree where I found you." Rose was silent for a long moment, weighing how much to share. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady despite the pain the memories evoked. "I was engaged to a man named James Sullivan, the son of the wealthiest rancher in Willow Creek. When I discovered I was with child, I went to him, believing he would stand by me." She laughed bitterly. "He denied everything, claimed I had been with others, and his father threatened to have me run out of town if I persisted in slandering their good name." Yates's hand tightened on the arm of his chair, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "My father is the pastor of our church. When he learned of my condition, he gave me a choice: name the Father and submit to public repentance, or leave his house." Rose's voice caught. "I named James, but with the Sullivans' influence, no one believed me. My father chose his position over his daughter, and I was cast out. Emma was born in a midwife's home, and we stayed as long as my small savings allowed. When that ran out, we had nowhere to go. The day you found us was the day we left Willow Creek for good," she finished, finally meeting Yates's gaze. "I don't know where we would have ended up if you hadn't come along." Yates was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim light. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "What your father did, what that man did, it wasn't right." He reached across the space between them, his hand hovering uncertainly before covering hers. "But I'm glad it brought you here." The warmth of his touch spread through Rose, anchoring her to this moment, this place that was rapidly becoming home. "So am I," she admitted softly. As spring gave way to early summer, life at the McKinnon ranch fell into a pleasant rhythm. Rose's presence had brought new life to the household, and even Martha commented on how Yates smiled more these days. Emma grew stronger each day, her curious eyes taking in the world around her with increasing awareness. Yates, for his part, found himself increasingly drawn to Rose. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was certainly beautiful. It was her strength, her determination to provide for her daughter despite the odds stacked against her. It was the way she hummed while hanging laundry, the gentle patience she showed with Emma, and the quick wit that emerged as she became more comfortable in their presence. One afternoon, as Rose sat on a blanket under the shade of an elm tree, watching Emma practice rolling over, Yates approached with a small wooden object in his hands. "Thought she might like this," he said, somewhat shyly, presenting a beautifully crafted rattle. "My pa made one for me when I was small, according to Ma. Figured I'd try my hand at it." Rose accepted the gift, turning it over in her hands to admire the smooth finish and the careful carving. "Yates, it's beautiful. When did you find time to make this?" He shrugged, settling onto the blanket beside her. "Evenings, mostly. It's nice to work with my hands on something besides fence posts and cattle." Rose placed the rattle in Emma's reaching hands, smiling as the baby immediately brought it to her mouth. "I think she approves," she laughed, then turned to Yates with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, not just for this, but for everything you've done for us." "No need for thanks," Yates replied, his gaze lingering on her face. "Having you both here, it's made this place feel more like home than it has in a long time." The admission hung between them, charged with unspoken feelings that neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Rose looked away first, focusing on Emma to hide the blush rising to her cheeks. "Would you watch her for a moment?" she asked. "I promised your mother I'd help with dinner preparations." "Of course," Yates replied, reaching out to tickle Emma's belly, eliciting a gurgle of delight from the infant. "We'll be just fine, won't we, Miss Emma?" As Rose walked toward the house, she glanced back to see Yates lying on his stomach, face to face with Emma, making exaggerated expressions that had her daughter reaching for his nose with chubby fingers. The sight made her heart ache with a bittersweet longing. This was what Emma deserved, what Rose had hoped James would provide. A father who delighted in her existence. From the kitchen window, Martha observed the same scene, a knowing smile on her lips as she watched her son with Rose's daughter. When Rose entered, Martha handed her an apron without comment, though her eyes twinkled with unspoken thoughts. "He's good with her," Rose said finally, breaking the comfortable silence as they worked side by side preparing vegetables. "He always had a way with little ones," Martha agreed. "Some men are just born to be fathers, I think." She paused, glancing at Rose. "He cares for you both, you know." Rose kept her eyes on the carrots she was slicing. "We're grateful for his kindness." Martha's laugh was gentle but knowing. "Oh, child, it's far more than kindness that has my son carving baby rattles into the night and volunteering to change nappies." She touched Rose's arm, prompting her to meet her gaze. "I've not seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not ever." Rose's heart quickened at Martha's words, but caution tempered her response. "I'm an unwed mother with nothing to my name, Martha, hardly a suitable match for your son." "And I was a pregnant widow with a farm in foreclosure when I met Yates's stepfather," Martha countered. "Love doesn't concern itself with suitable matches, Rose. It finds us when we need it most, often in the most unexpected packages." Before Rose could respond, the door burst open, and Yates entered with Emma secure in his arms, the baby's face alight with excitement from their time outdoors. "I believe this young lady is getting hungry," he announced, gently transferring Emma to Rose's waiting arms. "She's got quite a grip on her, I must say. Nearly pulled my ear clean off." Rose laughed, the tension of the previous conversation melting away in the warmth of Yates's smile. "She knows quality when she sees it," she teased, surprising herself with the flirtatious tone that had crept into her voice. Yates's eyes widened slightly, a pleased flush spreading across his features. "Well then, I'm honored to have met with the young lady's approval." Martha cleared her throat pointedly. "If you two are finished making eyes at each other, dinner still needs finishing, and I'm sure Yates has chores waiting." Yates ducked his head, embarrassed but not displeased by his mother's observation. "Yes, madam," he replied, backing toward the door. "I'll just go tend to those horses." As he left, Martha's knowing chuckle filled the kitchen. "That boy is smitten as a schoolboy with his first sweetheart." Rose busied herself with settling Emma, hoping to hide the hope that bloomed in her chest at Martha's words. She had learned the hard way not to trust in promises and tender glances. Yet, despite her best efforts, she couldn't help the small flame of possibility that Yates had kindled within her. The summer days stretched long and golden, filled with work and laughter and the small, precious moments that formed the foundation of their growing attachment. Yates taught Rose to ride, his hand steady at her waist as she gained confidence in the saddle. Rose showed Yates how to calm Emma during her fussy evenings, the baby responding to his deep voice with wide-eyed fascination. One evening in late July, as a rare summer storm rolled across the plains, Rose sat on the covered porch, watching the rain fall in sheets across the parched earth. Emma had been put to bed, and Martha had retired early with a headache, leaving Rose alone with her thoughts. The creak of the door announced Yates's presence before he settled into the chair beside her, 2 steaming mugs in his hands. "Thought you might like some tea," he said, offering one to Rose. "It's getting cooler with the rain." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the warm mug gratefully. The storm had indeed brought a chill to the air, though Rose suspected her shiver had more to do with Yates's proximity than the temperature. They sat in companionable silence for a time, listening to the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof. Finally, Yates spoke, his voice quiet but clear against the backdrop of the storm. "I've been thinking about what you told me about Emma's father and your family." Rose tensed, her hands tightening around her mug. "What about it?" Yates turned to face her, his expression earnest in the dim light. "I want you to know that not all men are like him, and not all families turn their backs on their own." "I know that now," Rose said softly, thinking of Martha's unconditional acceptance and Yates's gentle care. "You and your mother have shown me that." "Rose," Yates began, setting his mug aside and reaching for her hand. "I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll hear me out." Heart hammering, Rose nodded, allowing him to take her hand in his. "When I found you that day, I thought I was just doing what any decent man would do, helping someone in need. But these past months, watching you with Emma, seeing your strength and kindness, I've come to care for you both in a way I never expected." He took a deep breath, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, but I want you to know that if you choose to stay here, with me, I would consider it the greatest blessing of my life." Rose sat very still, afraid that any movement might shatter this moment. "Yates, I can't offer you what a man like you deserves, a woman without a past, without complications." "What I deserve," Yates repeated, a note of disbelief in his voice. "Rose, what I deserve has nothing to do with what I want. And what I want is you and Emma, complications and all. Your past isn't something to be ashamed of, it's what made you the woman sitting before me now. The woman I've fallen in love with." The declaration hung between them, as tangible as the rain falling beyond the porch. Rose's breath caught in her throat, torn between joy and fear. "I don't expect an answer tonight," Yates continued, seeming to sense her turmoil. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. Take all the time you need." He rose to leave, but Rose caught his hand, stopping him. Slowly, she stood to face him, her heart in her eyes. "I don't need time," she whispered. "I've known how I felt about you since that first night on this porch when you listened to my story without judgment. I was just too afraid to believe it could be real." Yates's face transformed with hope. "And how do you feel?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the storm. In answer, Rose stepped closer, her free hand reaching up to touch his cheek. "Like I've found home," she said simply. And then she was in his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised everything she had stopped believing was possible. The storm raged around them, but on the small porch of the McKinnon ranch, Rose and Yates had found their shelter in each other. News of their courtship spread quickly through the small community surrounding the McKinnon ranch. Most received it with good cheer, having witnessed the growing bond between Yates and Rose over the summer months. A few raised eyebrows at Yates's willingness to take on another man's child, but Martha silenced such talk with a stern reminder of Christian charity and her unwavering support of the match. For Rose, the transition from employee to courted woman was both thrilling and frightening. Years of believing herself unworthy of love made Yates's open affection sometimes overwhelming. Yet with each passing day, his steady presence and unwavering devotion chipped away at the walls she had built around her heart. Emma, now 7 months old, thrived under the attention of both Martha and Yates. She had begun to crawl, exploring the ranch house with determined curiosity that kept everyone on their toes. To Rose's delight, Emma's first recognizable word was, "Yeah," her attempt at Yates's name, which she called out whenever he entered a room. One crisp September morning, as Rose hung laundry while Emma practiced standing against a chair nearby, Martha approached with a mysterious smile. "Yates asked me to watch Emma this afternoon," she announced, lifting the baby into her arms. Says he has something special planned for you too. Rose raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Did he say what? Martha shook her head. Not a word, though he did ride into town yesterday and came back looking mighty pleased with himself. She winked. Best wear your blue dress, the one that brings out your eyes. He'll be back from the north pasture around noon. True to Martha's prediction, Yates returned at midday, freshly shaved and changed into clean clothes. His eyes lit up at the sight of Rose in her blue dress, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders the way he preferred it. "You look beautiful," he said, placing a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Ready for an adventure?" Rose laughed, curious about his mysterious plans. "I suppose I am, though I wish you'd tell me what you're plotting." "Where would be the fun in that?" Yates teased, leading her to where 2 horses waited, saddled and ready. "It's not far, but I wanted us to have some time alone." They rode for about half an hour, Yates leading them through a grove of cottonwoods to a secluded spot beside a small creek. A blanket had already been spread beneath the largest tree, with a basket resting upon it. "You've been busy," Rose observed as Yates helped her dismount. "I wanted today to be special," he replied, a hint of nervousness in his voice that Rose found endearing. The picnic was simple but thoughtful: cold chicken, fresh bread, a jar of Martha's strawberry preserves, and a small pie that Rose recognized as her favorite from the ranch kitchen. They ate and talked, enjoying the rare opportunity to be alone together without the responsibilities of the ranch or Emma demanding attention. As they finished the last of the pie, Yates grew quiet, his expression turning serious. Rose felt a flutter of anticipation, sensing that whatever he had planned was about to be revealed. "Rose," he began, taking her hand in his, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. Finding you and Emma was like finding pieces of myself I never knew were missing." Rose's heart began to race as Yates shifted to kneel before her, still holding her hand. "I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. "Rose Blackwood, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of allowing me to be a father to Emma and any children we might be blessed with in the future?" Tears sprang to Rose's eyes as Yates emptied the pouch into his palm, revealing a delicate gold band set with a small pearl. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "Ma gave it to me yesterday when I told her my intentions." "Yes," Rose whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Yates, I will marry you." With hands that trembled slightly, Yates slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into his arms for a kiss that sealed their promise to each other. "I want you to know," he said when they finally parted, "that I consider it a privilege to be Emma's father. When we marry, I intend to give her my name in every way that matters." Fresh tears spilled down Rose's cheeks at his words. "You are already more of a father to her than James ever could have been," she said. "She is blessed to have you, as am I." They stayed by the creek until the sun began its descent, planning their future together with the kind of joyful certainty that comes from knowing you've found your place in the world. The news of their engagement was met with celebration at the ranch. Martha embraced Rose with tears in her eyes, welcoming her officially to the family she had already claimed in her heart. Emma, sensing the excitement though not understanding its cause, babbled happily in Yates's arms as he proudly announced their plans to marry before the first snow. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a flurry of preparation. Martha insisted on sewing Rose a proper wedding dress, using fabric ordered specially from Dallas. The neighboring ranchers and their families, who had come to know and respect Rose during her time at the McKinnon place, contributed to the celebration with offers of food, flowers, and music. Rose found herself overwhelmed by the community's generosity, so different from the judgment and rejection she had faced in Willow Creek. When she expressed this to Martha one evening as they worked on the wedding dress, the older woman nodded in understanding. "People can be cruel when they're afraid," Martha said, her needle moving steadily through the cream-colored fabric. "And nothing frightens small minds more than a woman who defies their expectations." She looked up, meeting Rose's gaze. "But out here, folks judge you by your actions, not your past. You've earned their respect by working hard and caring for your child with dignity." Rose touched the ring on her finger, still marveling at the turn her life had taken. "I never imagined I could be this happy again," she admitted. "After everything that happened, I thought that part of my life was over." Martha set aside her sewing to take Rose's hands in hers. "The heart is resilient, child. It can weather the fiercest storms and still find the strength to love again." She smiled, her eyes twinkling. "And my son is a lucky man to have one yours." The day of the wedding dawned clear and cool, with the kind of brilliant blue sky that seemed to stretch to eternity. Rose stood before the small mirror in her room, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at her. Martha's skillful hands had transformed the simple cream fabric into an elegant gown that flattered Rose's slender figure. Her hair was arranged in soft curls, adorned with small white flowers from Martha's late-blooming garden. A knock at the door announced Martha's arrival, Emma freshly dressed in a tiny gown that matched Rose's in miniature. "Oh, my dear," Martha breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "You look absolutely beautiful. Yates won't be able to speak when he sees you." Rose laughed, accepting Emma into her arms. "As long as he manages to say I do, I'll be satisfied." Martha approached with a small wooden box. "I have something for you, something borrowed, as tradition requires." Opening the box, she revealed a delicate silver locket. "My mother wore this on her wedding day and I on mine. I'd be honored if you would wear it today." Tears threatened as Martha fastened the locket around Rose's neck. "Thank you," Rose whispered, embracing the woman who had become like a mother to her, "for everything." The ceremony took place under the same cottonwood where Yates had proposed, now decorated with ribbons and wildflowers. The local preacher officiated, his words carrying across the gathered crowd of neighbors and friends who had come to witness the union. Yates waited beneath the tree, his normally confident demeanor softened by emotion as he watched Rose approach with Emma in her arms and Martha at her side. His eyes never left Rose's face as she joined him before the preacher, Emma reaching out to pat his cheek in greeting. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, his voice ringing with sincerity, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony, and to celebrate the formation of a family bound by love and commitment." The vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken with voices that occasionally trembled with the weight of their meaning. When Yates promised to love and cherish not only Rose but Emma as well, there wasn't a dry eye among the witnesses. "By the power vested in me," the preacher concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. McKinnon, you may kiss your bride." Yates's kiss was gentle yet filled with promise, mindful of Emma still perched on Rose's hip. As they turned to face their guests as husband and wife, Emma clapped her hands in delight, bringing laughter from the assembled crowd. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening, with food and dancing and the kind of genuine goodwill that made Rose's heart full to bursting. As twilight descended, Yates found her sitting at the edge of the gathering, watching as Martha danced Emma around the makeshift floor. "Mrs. McKinnon," he said, offering his hand with a smile that still made her pulse quicken, "may I have this dance?" Rose placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her into the circle of light cast by the lanterns. "I still can't quite believe it," she confessed as they swayed to the fiddle's melody. "That I'm your wife, that we're a family." Yates's arm tightened around her waist, drawing her closer. "Believe it," he murmured against her ear. "I plan to remind you every day for the rest of our lives." Later that night, after the guests had departed and Emma was settled in her crib in Martha's room, a wedding gift to the newlyweds Rose, and Yates finally found themselves alone in what was now their shared bedroom. The intimacy they had carefully respected during their courtship now blossomed in the privacy of their marriage bed, where Yates's tenderness and Rose's trust created a bond that transcended the physical union of their bodies. As they lay together in the quiet aftermath, Rose's head resting on Yates's chest, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. Here, in the circle of her husband's arms, with her daughter sleeping safely nearby, Rose had found not just shelter but a home, a place where love had healed the wounds of her past and opened the door to a future brighter than she had dared to dream. "I love you, Yates McKinnon," she whispered into the darkness. His arms tightened around her, his lips pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And I love you, Rose McKinnon. You and Emma are my heart." In the years that followed, the McKinnon ranch flourished under Yates's capable management and Rose's practical support. Emma grew from a baby to a curious toddler who trailed after Yates like a shadow, absorbing his gentle lessons about horses and cattle and the land they called home. She called him Papa without prompting, the word falling from her lips as naturally as breathing. A year after their wedding, Rose gave birth to their son, Samuel, a sturdy boy with Yates's dark hair and Rose's determined spirit. 2 years later, twins Lily and Josephine joined the family, bringing both joy and chaos to the ranch house. Martha delighted in her role as grandmother, though she insisted on maintaining her own small cabin on the property, giving the growing family the space of the main house. "Young families need room to grow," she declared, though she was never more than a short walk away when needed. The McKinnon name became known throughout the county for both the quality of their cattle and the warmth of their hospitality. Twice yearly, they hosted gatherings that brought together the scattered families of the region, strengthening the bonds of community that were vital to survival on the frontier. On Emma's 5th birthday, as the family celebrated with a special dinner and the cake Rose had spent hours preparing, Yates presented his eldest daughter with a document that brought tears to Rose's eyes. "What is it, Papa?" Emma asked, carefully unfolding the official-looking paper. "It's a special paper that says you're my daughter in every way, not just in my heart," Yates explained, kneeling beside her chair. "It means you're Emma McKinnon now and always." The adoption papers had required a journey to the county seat, and the reluctant cooperation of James Sullivan, who had finally been persuaded with the help of a substantial sum and the threat of public exposure to relinquish his parental rights. Yates had kept the process secret from Rose, wanting to surprise both her and Emma with the completed documents. Emma's face lit up with understanding. "So I'm really, truly yours, just like Sam and the twins. You always have been," Yates assured her, gathering her into a hug. "This just makes it official for everyone else to see." Across the table, Rose met her husband's gaze, her heart so full it threatened to overflow. In that moment, watching the man she loved embrace the daughter who had once been her only anchor in a storm of rejection, Rose felt the final piece of her past heal. That night, after the children were asleep, Rose and Yates sat on the porch swing that had become their favorite spot for quiet conversations at day's end. "Thank you," she said, leaning against his shoulder as they looked out at the stars, "for what you did for Emma. For what you've done for all of us." Yates pressed a kiss to her temple, his arm secure around her shoulders. "I should be thanking you," he replied. "If I hadn't found you that day, if you hadn't been brave enough to trust me, I would have missed out on the greatest happiness of my life." Rose smiled, thinking of the frightened young woman she had been, clutching her baby and facing an uncertain future. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night, about helping those in need being a duty, not a kindness?" Yates nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I remember." "I've been thinking about that," Rose continued, "about how sometimes what begins as duty can transform into something far more powerful." She turned to face him, framing his beloved face with her hands. "You took our hands that day and never let go, even when it would have been easier to walk away." "Easier, perhaps," Yates agreed, covering her hands with his own, "but infinitely poorer. The moment I saw you standing there with Emma on your hip, something in me knew you were meant to be mine to care for." As the evening deepened around them, Rose nestled closer to her husband, grateful for the twists of fate that had brought them together. From the ashes of rejection and heartbreak, they had built a life filled with love, laughter, and the kind of deep contentment that comes from knowing you are exactly where you belong. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, the sound echoing across the Texas plains that had become home. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were cherished. And on the porch, Rose and Yates McKinnon held each other close, their love a beacon in the vastness of the frontier, a reminder that even in the wild, untamed spaces of the West, the human heart could find its way home. 10 years after that fateful day when Yates had discovered Rose and Emma beneath the lone tree, the McKinnon Ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous in the county. What had once been a modest operation now boasted extensive grazing lands, a herd of over 500 cattle, and a reputation for quality that brought buyers from as far as Kansas City. Emma, now a spirited girl of 10 with her mother's auburn hair and a confident demeanor that spoke of a childhood filled with love and security, had developed a remarkable talent with horses. Yates had gifted her with a pinto mare of her own on her 9th birthday, and the two were inseparable. Samuel, at 9, showed his father's head for business and could already calculate the value of a head of cattle with uncanny accuracy. The twins, Lily and Josephine, were 7 now, identical in appearance but distinctly different in personality, Lily quiet and thoughtful, Josephine bold and adventurous. Rose had blossomed as well, her natural intelligence finding expression not only in the management of their growing household, but in the small school she had established for the children of neighboring ranches. 3 days a week, the McKinnon dining room transformed into a classroom where a dozen children received instruction in reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. It was during one of these school sessions, on a bright spring morning, that a stranger rode up to the McKinnon ranch. Yates, who had been mending a fence nearby, approached the visitor with the casual friendliness that characterized the frontier's hospitality. "Morning," he called, removing his gloves as he neared the rider. "Something I can help you with," the man, well-dressed but travel-worn, dismounted slowly. "I'm looking for Rose Blackwood," he said, his voice carrying the refined accent of the East. "I was told in town she might be found here." Yates's expression remained neutral, though a flicker of wariness crossed his features. "Rose McKinnon is my wife," he replied, emphasizing her married name. "May I ask who's calling?" The stranger hesitated, seeming to measure his words. "My name is William Blackwood. I'm Rose's brother." Surprise registered on Yates's face, quickly followed by caution. He knew from Rose's rare mentions of her family that she had an older brother who had been away at university when she was cast out. According to Rose, they had been close as children, but she had never attempted to contact him after her exile, assuming he shared their father's condemnation. "Rose is teaching at the moment," Yates said, studying the man who claimed to be his wife's brother. The family resemblance was there, the same auburn hair, though darker, and something in the set of his jaw. "Why don't you come inside? I'll let her know you're here." William nodded, following Yates toward the house with visible apprehension. As they approached, the sound of children's voices reciting multiplication tables drifted through the open windows. Inside, Yates found Rose at the head of the table, surrounded by her students. Her face lit up at the sight of her husband, then registered confusion at his serious expression. "Children, please continue with your sums while I speak with Mr. McKinnon," she instructed, moving to join Yates in the hallway. "What is it? Is something wrong?" Yates took her hands in his voice low. "There's a man here who says he's your brother, William. He's waiting on the porch. I wanted to prepare you before." He trailed off, concerned by the pallor that had spread across Rose's features. "William is here," she whispered, disbelief evident in her voice. "After all this time," Yates nodded, his protective instincts surging. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to, Rose. I can send him away." Rose took a deep breath, squeezing Yates's hands in gratitude. "No, I want to see him. It's been so long, and I've often wondered." She composed herself with visible effort. "Can you watch the children? I won't be long." With a nod, Yates released her hands and moved toward the dining room to supervise the lesson, though his concern remained evident in the furrow of his brow. Rose stepped onto the porch, her heart pounding as she caught sight of the man standing with his back to the door, gazing out at the ranch. Though it had been over a decade, she would have known her brother anywhere. "William," she called softly. He turned, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other, cataloging the changes that time had wrought. William had matured from the lanky youth of her memory into a distinguished man in his 30s, though his eyes, the same green as her own, remained unchanged. "Rose," he breathed, taking a step toward her before hesitating. "I wasn't sure you would see me." "I wasn't sure I would either," she admitted, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's been a very long time." William nodded, regret etching lines around his mouth. "Too long, Rose. I don't know where to begin." "Why are you here, William?" Rose asked directly, unwilling to pretend this was a simple family reunion. After 10 years of silence, why now? Her brother's shoulders slumped slightly. "Father is dying," he said bluntly. "Consumption. The doctors give him weeks, perhaps a month." Rose absorbed this news with surprising calm. The man who had once been the center of her world, whose approval she had sought in everything, now seemed like a distant figure from another life. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said finally, meaning it despite everything. "But I still don't understand why you've come all this way to tell me this." William stepped closer, his expression earnest. "He asked for you, Rose. In his lucid moments, he speaks your name. I believe he wants to make peace before he goes." A complex wave of emotions washed over Rose's: anger, grief, a flicker of the yearning for paternal approval that had never fully died. "After what he did, after casting me out when I needed him most, now he wants peace." "I know," William acknowledged, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made Rose's chest ache. "Believe me, I know. When I returned from university and learned what had happened, I was furious. I searched for you, but no one knew where you had gone." This was news to Rose. "You looked for me," William nodded, his expression pained. "For months. I even traveled to several neighboring towns asking after a young woman with a baby, but it was as if you had vanished." He glanced at the house behind her. "Until last week, when I met a cattle buyer in Dallas who mentioned a Mrs. McKinnon who taught school and had been from Willow Creek originally. It was a slim connection, but I had to see if it was you." Rose leaned against the porch railing, trying to process this revelation. All these years, she had believed her entire family had rejected her, when in fact her brother had been searching for her. "Why didn't you write to me before everything happened?" she asked, the question that had haunted her for years finally finding voice. "When I found out I was with child, I wrote to you for help. The letter was returned unopened." Confusion crossed William's features. "I never received any letter, Rose. Father must have intercepted it." He shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. "He controlled everything in that house, the mail, the visitors, even the sermons he preached. It wasn't until I confronted him about your disappearance that I realized how far he had gone to preserve his precious reputation." A tense silence fell between them, filled with the weight of lost years and missed opportunities. Finally, Rose spoke, her voice soft but determined. "I have a family now, William. A husband who loves me, Emma who is 10 now and the joy of our lives, and 3 more children besides. I've built a life here, a good life, from the ashes of what Father did to me." She met her brother's gaze steadily. "I'm not sure I can face him again, even on his deathbed." William nodded in understanding. "I'm not asking you to forgive him, Rose. I'm not even sure I have. But I thought you deserved the choice." He hesitated, then added, "And selfishly, I hope to find my sister again, to meet her family and perhaps be part of her life if she'll allow it." The door opened behind them, and Emma's curious face appeared, her eyes widening at the sight of the stranger. "Mama, Papa says to tell you that the lesson is finished and the children are ready to go home." Rose smiled at her daughter, beckoning her forward. "Emma, come meet your Uncle William. He's my brother." Emma approached cautiously, studying William with the direct gaze she had inherited from her mother. "I didn't know Mama had a brother," she said candidly. "She never talks about her family from before." William knelt to Emma's level, his expression softening. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma. Your mother and I were very close once, a long time ago." Emma considered this, then with the simple acceptance of childhood, offered her hand. "Would you like to see my horse, Uncle William? Her name is Penny and she's the fastest in the county." A genuine smile broke across William's face as he shook Emma's hand solemnly. "I would be honored, Miss Emma." As Emma led William toward the barn, chattering about Penny's many virtues, Rose felt Yates's presence beside her. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his arm slipping around her waist. Rose leaned into his strength, watching her brother and daughter together with mixed emotions. "I think I will be," she replied. "It's a lot to take in." "What will you do about your father?" Yates asked, having overheard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. Rose sighed, the decision forming in her heart even as she spoke. "I think I need to see him, Yates, not for his sake but for mine, to finally close that chapter of my life." Yates nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then we'll go together, all of us. You're not facing this alone, Rose." Not ever again. 2 weeks later, the McKinnon family arrived in Willow Creek, a town Rose had sworn never to return to. The journey had been long, especially with 4 children in tow, but Rose had insisted they come as a family. "I want him to see what he rejected," she had explained to Yates. "The grandchildren he never knew, the life I built without him." William had arranged for them to stay at the town's small hotel rather than the parsonage, understanding Rose's reluctance to sleep under her father's roof. As they settled into their rooms, Rose stood by the window, gazing out at the familiar yet changed landscape of her hometown. "It feels smaller than I remember," she commented as Yates joined her. "Towns often do when you return as an adult," he replied, his solid presence a comfort at her back. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Rose turned to face him, drawing strength from the love in his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be." The following morning, after ensuring the children were settled with activities under Martha's watchful eye, Rose and Yates made their way to the parsonage. William met them at the door, his expression grave. "He's had a difficult night," he warned in a low voice. "The doctor came early this morning and increased his laudanum. He's lucid now but very weak." Rose nodded, steeling herself as William led them to the bedroom where her father lay. The Reverend Thomas Blackwood had once been a powerful figure, both physically and in presence. The man who lay in the bed now was a shadow, his frame wasted by disease, his once commanding voice reduced to a whisper. As Rose approached the bedside, her father's eyes opened, focusing on her with startling clarity. For a long moment neither spoke, the weight of their shared history suspended between them. "Rose," he finally rasped, his voice barely audible. "You came." "Yes, father," she replied, her tone neutral. "William said you asked for me." The old man's gaze shifted to Yates, who stood protectively at Rose's side. "This is your husband." "Yes, this is Yates McKinnon, my husband of 10 years. She placed her hand in Yates's, drawing strength from his steady presence. "We have 4 beautiful children together." Thomas's eyes closed briefly, his breath labored. When he opened them again, there was something new in his expression, something Rose had never expected to see. Regret. "I was wrong," he whispered, the words clearly costing him great effort. "What I did to you, it was unforgivable." Rose had imagined this moment many times over the years, her father's apology, her own righteous anger. But faced with the reality of his imminent death, she found those rehearsed responses hollow. Instead, a strange calm settled over her. "Yes, it was," she agreed, her voice gentle despite the harsh words. "You chose your reputation over your daughter. You turned your back on me when I needed you most." Thomas nodded weakly, a tear slipping from the corner of his eye. "I have asked God for forgiveness every day since, but I know I have no right to ask it of you." Rose was silent for a long moment, aware of Yates's supportive presence beside her and William's watchful gaze from the doorway. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "I forgive you, Father. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry the weight of your actions any longer." She leaned closer, ensuring he could hear her next words clearly. "I have built a beautiful life, a life filled with love and purpose. I want you to know that before you go." Relief washed over Thomas's wasted features. "Your mother would be proud of you," he whispered. "She was always stronger than I was." The mention of her mother, who had died when Rose was 16, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "I wish she had lived to see her grandchildren," she said softly. "Tell me about them," Thomas requested, his voice fading as exhaustion claimed him. And so Rose did, describing Emma's spirit and Samuel's cleverness, the twins' contrasting personalities and the joy they brought to the ranch. She spoke of her teaching and Yates's success with the cattle, of Martha's loving guidance and the community they had built. As she talked, she watched her father's expression soften, his breathing becoming more labored but his attention unwavering. When she had finished, Thomas reached out a trembling hand, which Rose took after only a moment's hesitation. "Thank you," he whispered, "for coming, for telling me." His gaze shifted to Yates. "Take care of her." Yates nodded solemnly. "Every day of my life, sir." Exhausted by the conversation, Thomas drifted into sleep, his hand still loosely holding Rose's. She sat with him for a time, thoughts of the past and present mingling as she watched the rise and fall of his chest. Eventually, she gently disengaged her hand and stood, turning to Yates with a sense of peace she had not expected to find in this room. "I'm ready to go now," she said quietly. "I've said what needed to be said." Thomas Blackwood passed away 3 days later with William at his bedside. Rose, having made her peace, chose not to be present for his final moments. Instead, she and Yates took the children to the small creek where she had played as a child, sharing stories of her youth and creating new memories to replace the painful ones. The funeral was a simple affair, attended by the townspeople who had known the Reverend as their spiritual leader for decades. Rose stood with her family, accepting condolences with quiet dignity. Many of those who approached her did so with awkward attempts at apology for their part in her ostracism years before. Rose accepted these with grace, neither absolving nor condemning them for choices made in a different time. After the service, as they prepared to return to the ranch, William approached Rose with a legal document in hand. "Father left the house and its contents to me," he explained, "but he specified that this was to go to you." He handed her an envelope containing a deed to a small parcel of land on the outskirts of town land that had belonged to their mother's family. "I had forgotten about this place," Rose said softly, memories of picnics and summer afternoons flooding back. "Mother always loved it there." William nodded, a tentative smile on his face. "I thought perhaps, if you were amenable, I might build a house there. I've been offered a position at the school in Dallas, but it would be nice to have a place to return to, a place where my nieces and nephew might visit from time to time." The suggestion, with its implication of ongoing family connection, brought tears to Rose's eyes. "I would like that very much, William." As they said their goodbyes, promising letters and future visits, Rose felt the final pieces of her past settling into place. The pain would always be a part of her story, but it no longer defined her. What defined her now was the love she had found, and the family she had created, a family that was now expanding to include the brother she had thought lost to her forever. The journey back to the ranch was filled with the children's chatter and Yates's quiet observations. The familiar routine of family travel a balm after the emotional turbulence of the past days. As they crested the final hill, the McKinnon ranch came into view, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. "Home," Emma sighed contentedly from her perch on the wagon seat beside Rose. Rose smiled, reaching for Yates's hand as he guided the horses down the slope. "Yes," she agreed, looking at the man who had found her at her lowest moment and lifted her to heights she had never imagined possible. "Home." That evening, as the children slept and Martha retired to her cabin, Rose and Yates sat on their porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky. The events of the past weeks had brought a new perspective to Rose, a sense of completion that allowed her to look forward without the shadow of rejection that had haunted her for so long. "Thank you," she said softly, nestling into the crook of Yates's arm, "for standing by me through all of this. For being the man you are." Yates pressed a kiss to her temple, his arms tightening around her. "You never need to thank me for loving you, Rose. It's as natural as breathing." Rose smiled, thinking of the frightened young woman she had been that day beneath the lone tree, Emma on her hip and despair in her heart. How far they had come from that moment, a journey of love, trust, and the family they had built together. "You remember what you said to me the day we met?" she asked, looking up at the man who had become her world. "You said turning away from someone who needs help is the same as condemning them." Yates nodded, his expression thoughtful in the dim light. "I believe that still." "You did more than help us, Yates," Rose said, her voice warm with emotion. "You gave us a home, a family, a place to belong. You took our hands that day and never let go." Under the vast canvas of stars in the heart of the Texas frontier they had tamed together, Yates drew his wife closer, his voice a promise against her hair. "And I never will, Rose, not for all the days of our lives." And in the years that followed, as Emma grew into a confident young woman who eventually married the son of a neighboring rancher, as Samuel took his place alongside his father in the family business, as the twins became the beauty and brains of the county respectively, Yates kept that promise. Through drought and plenty, through joy and sorrow, through the inevitable challenges of life on the frontier, his hand remained firmly clasped with Rose's, a living testament to the power of love to heal, to transform, and to create something beautiful from the broken pieces of the past. For Rose McKinnon, the girl who had once been cast out with nothing but her baby and her determination, that steadfast love was the greatest gift of all, the foundation upon which she had built not just a life, but a legacy of strength, forgiveness, and the enduring power of second chances.